Hello there, welcome to ITV News Meridian.
Your headlines in the southeast this Friday evening. A drought is officially declared across Kent and the South Downs, meaning greater restrictions are likely to be imposed.
Millions of litres of water wasted through leaks while hosepipe bans are enforced. Demands for the water companies to do more.
Also tonight, life in the trenches, the quiet farm in Kent being used as the backdrop to a film about the First World War.
And in the heat wave, the creative ways gardeners can conserve water while keeping their plants alive. Good evening. A drought order is now in force for the whole of the southeast. It means that the hosepipe ban that started today could be the first of many tighter measures placed on water supplies.
Meanwhile, since the amber extreme heat warning came into place yesterday, fire crews in Kent have had to battle more than 50 incidents and East Sussex more than 40.
Well, Joe Caution is live for us at Buell Water Reservoir this evening. Joe, how are levels where you are?
Well, right now, Matt, the largest reservoir in the southeast is at 60%. Typically, at this time of year, it would be at 80%. That might not mean too much to you at home, but to give you an idea, I would be standing in about 3 foot's worth of water right now. That gives you an indicator of why that drought order has been declared. It's just extremely dry and extremely hot right now. Hurstmonceau in East Sussex was the hottest place in the country at one point today, reaching 33.8 degrees. That was soon topped over in neighbouring West Sussex by Wiganholt, which reached 34 degrees. And it's going to get even hotter over the weekend. The Met Office is warning of an exceptional risk of fires spreading, which puts extra pressure on fire crews, and that drought order putting extra strain on businesses too.
It was unbelievable at times. We'd be fighting fires in certain areas and all of a sudden the sky would turn black with soot and ash. It was almost apocalyptic.
Ravaging fires on this scale are a new experience for firefighters in the southeast. So much so they've been given new training to prepare for them. The two extremes of intense heat and next to no rain has left much of our patch parched and in some cases still smouldering here in Dartford 3 weeks after an initial fire.
In Kent alone we've been mobilised to over 400 incidents from July just to grass and wildfires compared to previous year which was 40, just over 40. So the numbers speak for themselves. It is hotter, it is more dangerous for us and the members of the public. So we'd kindly like to ask members of the public, please no bonfires in this sort of heat and this sort of temperature. And yeah, just be responsible with your rubbish as well. No glass, don't throw it on the floor, put your cigarettes out as you should.
Those fresh warnings come as all of Kent and Sussex have now been declared in drought, meaning water companies can start introducing stricter measures to conserve an already sparse water supply.
We can see that the weather is actually having quite an impact on the environment. So the drought order puts in place agreed plans between the Environment Agency and the water companies which aim to balance the water needs of people with the environment.
It's hard to remember the last time we had a huge downpour here in the southeast, and the statistics show just how dry it has been. The average July rainfall is 53 millimetres. But last month we had just 5, the driest since records began in 1936.
And in 40 years in greenkeeping, I've never experienced conditions quite as punishing as this summer's been.
Greenkeepers at North Foreland Golf Club can normally rely on their reservoir to keep the course watered, but this year they can't.
The concern for us would be around a drought order and the implications of that, which may well mean that we can't rely on mains water anymore and we'll be purely reliant on what's in the ground here and what comes out of our borehole, which is a small amount each day. And if that were to happen, then in the current situation with the heat that we've currently got, we've probably got about 10 days water left in here before we have to stop extracting from here because we've got a large fish population and obviously we're conscious of that as well, so we've got to maintain that.
You can't budget for these acts of God, so it could run into tens of thousands really. It just depends when we get some rain, if we get some rain.
But more scorching temperatures on the way mean it's less of a question of when or if, and more of a hope that the heavens will open soon.
Well, let's go back to Joe. Joe, when you hear the word drought, we all know roughly what that means, but practically what does that mean?
Well, you have to think of it, Matt, like a bit of a COVID tiered system, I guess. This is the most moderate stage right now, so there won't be an immediate impact on businesses. This will mainly affect households in the form of temporary orders, so it will depend on where you live, the water supply in your area, and the needs of the environment and on wildlife. So hosepipe bans we've already seen implemented in parts of our region. No filling up swimming pools and ponds, and no washing your cars, really. Those non-essential domestic activities. The advice is to let your car get a little bit grubby, or you could face a fine of £1,000. Now, there's warnings from the Environment Agency that this drought could be in place until next year. There's worries about what Buell water could look like in the months of March and April next year because of the lack of rainfall. They say they need a good few weeks of rain to get back to a decent level. So decisions could be made by individual water companies to introduce stricter measures, which would be unprecedented.
OK, Joe, for the time being, thank you very much indeed.
Well, the start of the hosepipe ban for large parts of Kent and Sussex has been met with anger in some communities where perfectly good water is being wasted.
South East Water has ordered its customers to stop using hoses and sprinklers from today, but there's criticism that the company is not doing enough to fix leaky pipes that have been broken for weeks. With more, here's Kit Bradshaw.
As the sun shines, the pipes continue to leak. From Burgess Hill to Haywards Heath, East Malling to Whitstable, where on this residential street there are not one but two leaks within 100 yards of each other. On the day the region's main supplier, South East Water, imposes a hosepipe ban on its customers.
This leak and the leak further down the road emerged early July, and there was a succession of workers coming and going, barriers, etc. A couple of days later, I noticed that there was water again coming out of where the leaks had been. I contacted South East Water and said, "You've not repaired the leaks properly." I just think that what's happening is not very good. We're paying money, we've got a hosepipe ban that's come in, and we've got leaks that have existed for a month and a half almost.
Recent figures show that South East Water loses on average 88 million litres of drinking water a day through leaks. And while that figure has been reducing over recent years, the regulator wants the company to act faster.
Nobody likes walking along the street, particularly when the grass is brown, the weather's warm, and seeing water flowing down the street. We don't like that either, and so we've been really clear with companies that they need to take more action to reduce leaks.
Back in Whitstable, one resident has been stockpiling stored rainwater to be able to keep his plants hydrated. Now the hose is out of bounds.
I've been filling up anything that I can get, which is quite a lot. I mean, we've got a butt at the back as well. So I've got two large water butts, and I'm emptying them all because I'm hoping that we get rain on Monday.
During the ban, you mustn't use a hose that's connected to a mains water supply. Examples of activities that are prohibited are watering your garden, cleaning your car, or filling a paddling pool. But there are some limited exemptions, such as for farms and sports grounds. South East Water declined our request for an interview. In a statement, they told us that the hosepipe ban follows the driest July in Kent since records began and the lowest rainfall in Sussex since 1911. It's not clear how long the new restrictions will last, but in many communities blighted by leaks, the questions will continue over why more isn't being done to stem the flow from heading down the drain. Kit Bradshaw, ITV News, Whitstable.
In other news tonight, police are continuing to question a 30-year-old man from Ramsgate after two people were killed when a car hit a family of five in the town. 40-year-old Nogga Hirschfield and her father Yoram, who was 78, were killed on Wednesday night outside a multi-storey car park. A schoolgirl was also seriously injured. A vigil was held yesterday to show support for the family. A man has been arrested on suspicion of causing death by dangerous driving and leaving the scene of a collision.
A new reporting service for coastal crime has been launched. The Border Force have joined up with Crime Stoppers to set up a special hotline and are urging holidaymakers and residents to stay vigilant and to speak up if they see anything suspicious. Callers will not be expected to give any personal details.
Residents from 60 properties in Seaford are being asked to boil their water before drinking it following repairs to a burst water main. The leak caused a huge sinkhole around the size of a car to appear in the middle of Crouch Lane between the High Street and East Street. South East Water have apologised for the disruption and say work to repair the road will be ongoing until early next week.
Now we are 3 weeks into the oh-so-long summer holidays, and you may be already starting to run out of ideas to keep the children amused and, more importantly, burning off all that energy.
Well, one activity that's arguably more popular than ever is trampolining, whether it's in the back garden or at a dedicated trampoline park. But safety campaigners are reminding people of the risks and the number of young people who end up in A&E. Here's James Webster.
It might seem fun and good exercise, but bouncing in your back garden does have its dangers. Researchers have analysed data from almost 1.5 million accidents worldwide, concluding that trampolining is fun but potentially dangerous. It's something we've been asking parents in Lewis all about.
We got it primarily because our son has special needs, and so it's a great thing during lockdown to be able to give him something to occupy him. I mean, they do have occasional knocks into one another, but other than that, not had to go to A&E or any broken bones.
I definitely, in light of that, wouldn't leave my son unattended on a trampoline. And I suppose there's no, unless you're having them sort of checked by someone, there's no way of knowing your trampoline is very safe.
And like I say, we've just bought one, so maybe we'll be a bit more cautious.
There's no better illustration of how popular trampolining now is than to look at how many activity centres like this one now exist. In 2014 there were just 3, now there are around 200.
So it's good just coming out here every so often and just to enjoy doing bouncing and stuff on the trampolines.
They absolutely love it. You can see them all bombing about, having a good time, loving it, yeah.
Most people my age want to be on their phones, but it's really nice to spend maybe an hour or two of your day just not being on your phones.
Right guys, we're just going to watch this safety briefing video if you all just want to make sure you're paying attention.
It was making the industry safer that prompted the owner of this chain to set up the business.
When you come to a facility which is maintained daily, supervised, with no platforms that you can fall off, changes the game massively. And garden trampolines is something I wouldn't let my children do.
And what better way to find out how staff here keep the kids safe than to have a go myself?
So we always say to them, if you jump in the middle of your trampoline, just because that's the central part, so you're not going to go towards the edges, keep it one person per trampoline.
How important is it that you just have the one person on each trampoline?
Quite important, just because there can be accidents and you don't know people's height, weight.
It gets quite tiring after a while, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. we tell them to come off and have 30 seconds and have a little drink and you can come back on.
That's exactly what I'm going to do. The researchers who've been analysing trampoline accidents want to see rules like these made mandatory in all such centres.
By doing this research, it's to sort of offer options for trampoline centres and parks to look at what we've found in terms of the types of injuries and identify ways in which they can reduce the risk for their consumers, because I think that's really important. I mean, no one likes to see kids get hurt, and these are all preventable injuries.
But he also has concerns about domestic trampolines, concerns that are shared by the safety charity ROSPA.
If you can, have a sort of 2 metre, 2.5 metre safety zone around it. Just get in the habit of giving the trampoline a once over. Make sure that nothing's damaged, the nets are still there, the pads are all in place. And maybe that's part of your garden routine. Maybe when you're mowing the lawn, give the trampoline a quick check as well.
Advice they hope will prevent accidents and still allow children to trampoline safely. James Webster, ITV News.
Well, we're exhausted after watching that. You probably are as well. You're watching ITV News in the Meridian region. Coming up, a look ahead to the rest of the weekend sports.
Including kabaddi, which I've never heard of, the fast-paced contact sport that drew thousands of fans to a tournament in Gravesend.
And as the heatwave continues and we officially enter a drought, how hot will it get and when can we expect to see some rainfall? I will, of course, have all the details.
More on all of our stories today, of course, on our website. There is the address, itv.com/Meridian, our phone number, 0808 1010 095, and our social media details as well. Do get in touch.
And the ITV Evening News continues with the national and international news at 6:30 with more details. Here's Gamal Fumbola.
Coming up, it's official, the drought has now been declared for millions of people across England. As temperatures hit the mid-30s and the rain stays away, huge swathes of the country are facing more water restrictions. Also ahead.
Why isn't the government behaving like there's a crisis?
What the Chancellor had to say about help for families facing hardship and... Did your city make the cut for the Eurovision shortlist? We'll have more on where the contest could be held. Join me for those stories and much more at 6:30.
No, ours didn't, so we're going to move straight on without giving it a second's thought. Now, a quiet farm in Kent is currently the set of a First World War film depicting life in the trenches.
Some 16 was inspired by the filmmaker's great-grandfather who was killed in action in the Battle of the Somme. Megan Samurai has been down to the Hawthorne Trench.
The Garden of England looks unrecognisable here in Elam. Home to a network of reconstructed trenches from World War I, which writer and director Steve found by chance.
I was making a World War II film at the time, but I thought, I wonder if there's a trench nearby. And there was a trench 15 minutes down the road from where I live. So, hello, this is fate. I've got to do this film now. And I spoke to the guys that own it. They're absolutely incredible. They've been really accommodating for us. We've got a German trench here, we've got a British trench here, we've got no man's land in between. It's a ready-to-go location, so I couldn't ask for anything easier, really.
Although the location was perfect, for one of the actors, their role carried more responsibility, as it's based on Steve's great-grandfather who was killed in action.
I play the role of Albert Peake of the East Yorkshire Regiment. He is the great-grandfather of the director Steve. He was a private in the army that fought during the Great War and died during the Battle of Flers-Courcelette. Steve is a close friend of mine, and he approached me to play the role of his great-grandfather, and there was a privilege in that because it's such a personal story to Steve that he entrusted that role to me because it's so personal to him. It's the gravity of a role like that is something you don't take for granted.
Capturing Albert's story on screen meant Steve could create a lasting record of his family's history, when much of it was unknown to his adopted grandmother.
It's really emotional, but it's nice that we now know who my great-granddad was. You know, my nan did have, and that sounds stupid, but my nan did have a dad and parents that cared for her. Do you know what? It's sort of closure in a way. I just wish my nan could see the information that I've found. It's just like proof that she was loved, she was there. And you know, when I found that photograph of him for the first time for looking for parish records, it was so moving to put a face to the name. I just wish I could show my nan that photograph and say, look, Nan, you are loved.
For the people I've been speaking to, Somme 16 is not just a war film. It's a personal project filled with stories of tragedy and loss. And although Steve never knew his great-grandfather, he'll make sure that the next generations will. Megan Samurai, ITV News, Elam.
And just to be very clear, all that was carried out in very controlled circumstances and before the tinder-dry conditions, all by experts, in case you're worried.
Right, talking of experts, Mel is here to talk about all the sport ahead of the weekend. And Mel, Brighton looking to go back-to-back Premier League victories.
Absolutely, that's the plan. The Seagulls welcome Newcastle to the Amex tomorrow in their first home game of the season. Striker Danny Welbeck won plaudits for his performance in the 2-1 win against his former club Manchester United last weekend. And boss Graham Potter says the 31-year-old is in the best shape of his Albion career.
Danny Welbeck is probably in the best condition, and he's certainly been in since I've been working with him. He's enjoying his football. He knows how important he is to the team. He's a top player, top person. He's always supported the team, always supported the guys, even when he hasn't been playing. Played a role fantastically well, somebody that everybody looks up to. So we're just delighted that he's enjoying his football.
Elsewhere, Crawley will be buoyed by their midweek Carabao Cup first round win over Bristol Rovers when they take on Harrogate Town tomorrow. They'll be looking to pick up their first points in the league during their trip to the Environet Stadium, while Gillingham travel to Tranmere Rovers. And don't forget, you can catch up on the Football League highlights on ITV4 from 9 o'clock tomorrow night. Now, the fast-moving contact sport kabaddi is enjoying rapid growth in England, and nowhere more so than in Gravesend, where a major tournament has been staged in the shadow of the town's famous Sikh temple. John Ryle reports.
Played between two teams of 7, the aim of the game is for a single player, the raider, to run into the opposition half, touch out as many defenders as possible and get back without being tackled. Speed and strength are the key qualities needed in a sport with elements of rugby and wrestling.
You have to be very, very active, fast, and you must be very strong. So if you know wrestling, you are halfway, you can play the game very easily, or if you know rugby, you can play this game very easily.
Teams from many UK towns and cities competing here at the sports ground of the Gravesend Gurdwara, Europe's biggest Sikh temple. One young player says the sport has boosted his self-confidence.
You have to be able to wrestle, have to be strong. Yeah, it's just, you have to be agile, you have to do so many things to do this sport. It teaches me self-defence, and that's important in everyday life. And as it's a tough sport, it encourages me not to drink or smoke, to become the best at it.
The organisers of this tournament believe kabaddi deserves a global stage.
And the fact is, people here from all over the country coming here to Gravesend. I think it's really proud, not just for Gratian, but for Kent, that people are coming down to this fantastic venue to see the kabaddi and obviously see the fantastic Gurdwara as well. It's played all around the world. It obviously originated in the Indian subcontinent, but as you can see today, the appeal is very wide.
And it may be about to get far wider, with calls for it to be considered for the Commonwealth Games and the 2024 Olympics. John Ryle, ITV News, Gravesend.
How fantastic would it be to see kabaddi in the Olympics, and maybe we could even start our own Meridian team.
It's quite rough, isn't it?
Quite physical.
Could get quite personal, I think.
It might do. Maybe not then.
You guys go first.
Thanks, Mel. Now, if you're a gardener, you must be wondering how you can keep your plants, shrubs and flowers looking good in these temperatures.
Well, with a hosepipe ban in place for much of the southeast, what steps can you take to ensure your garden survives? Well, Tom Savides has been finding out.
How does your garden grow in a drought? That's the question the green-fingered amongst us are asking. So I've come to Bald Hill Garden near Haywards Heath to find out. Harry Baldwin is on hand to share some tips.
What do you need to do where roses are concerned when we do have this intense heat?
Well, for me, Tom, it all starts back in the winter, so really good bed preparation. Here at Bald Hill, we produce all our own organic mulch, so we put that onto the beds thickly in early spring. So after all that winter and spring rain we've had, that moisture will lock into the soil. And these mature roses will then generally not need to have any extra water throughout the year. They're fairly resilient.
Well, this is a typical English garden with all these roses, but do you think because of the weather we're heading towards more Mediterranean style gardens in the future?
Well, it's funny you say that, Tom. Why don't you come and follow me?
So we head off to see how England's changing climate could have an impact on what we plant in our pots and flower beds.
So Harry, is this the type of garden that we could be seeing more of in southern England?
Absolutely. I think with these hotter, drier summers that we're getting on a regular basis now, it's probably going to be the catalyst of how we view traditional British gardens. So this is an example of a Mediterranean garden, and that's certainly the way we might be pushing towards in the future.
So what types of plants have you got here?
So we've got plenty of salvias like this one right here. We've got geraniums, we've got agapanthus, all of which don't need that much water and all come from those drier areas of the world.
Woodland gardens could also become a thing, with the canopy of trees protecting plants from the blistering sun. Bald Hill has turned off all its fountains to preserve water in this drought. It's also relying on its underground reserves and lake for essential watering. But one thing is for certain, the watering can is replacing the hosepipe in many parts of southern England. Tom Savides, ITV News, Bald Hill Garden.
Well, that one's still looking beautiful, unlike mine, which is looking pretty parched. My hydrangeas are drooping, seriously. You look really worried.
I have nothing to add.
Didn't give a damn, does he? Holly's here anyway. Holly, we've been officially in a heat wave, now in a drought.
That's right, so about the 6th day of the heat wave, parts of the region now haven't really seen any rain in over 40 days, and that's just one of the major factors really, on top of things like groundwater levels and river flows, as to why this drought has been declared today.
So I guess what we all want is rain, particularly your hydrangeas.
Desperate.
Is there any insight?
There is, and this sounds crazy to say it, but it's almost the wrong sort of rain. So you can remember the demonstration hopefully we showed yesterday. Let's just remind ourselves of it. It showed why or how it's so difficult for heavy rain to soak into very dry ground. And it's heavy rain that we could see in the form of showers or thunderstorms. So we're talking early next week, maybe Monday, possibly Tuesday. The trouble is though, as I say, you get these downpours, your ground's really hard, it rolls off, doesn't really A, replenish the soil, but B, it can lead to some flooding. So I wouldn't be surprised if we started to see some warnings being issued as we head into next week to cater for that risk, as I say, of some flooding.
Anything cheerful?
It would be nice.
I've
just
got
quickly.
something a little bit more cheerful. Quickly, let's take a look at a couple of supermoon photos from last night. Tom Lee shared this from Crowborough. A tiny little plane there you can just see flying in front of it. And lovely and big there, glowing over Uckfield. That was sent in by Jonathan Close. And just quickly tonight, the peak of the Perseids meteor shower. So eyes to the skies, you could see some shooting stars.
Right. Let's get a check on the forecast before we all start looking for shooting stars. So with the details, of course, it's Holly.
Feels like home, whatever the weather. Valent Boilers and Heat Pumps sponsors ITV Meridian Weather.
Well, another extremely warm day, and our heat warning remains in force as we head through the weekend as well. It is an amber warning for extreme heat. Increasingly uncomfortable nights, I think, as well. Then this chance of some thundery showers early next week, but uncertainty about the detail at the moment. This is the bigger picture. We've got this flow of air from the continent, and that's just allowing an extra injection of heat. And then you can see as we head into the beginning of next week, we start to see this chance of some thundery showers, but of course falling onto very dry surfaces, which could lead to the risk of some flooding. Out there this evening, sunshine around as we push into the night tonight, starry skies overhead. You could see a few scraps of mistiness, but I think that would be the exception really, rather than the rule. And it's a warm one. Some of us won't drop much below 18, 19 degrees. If values don't fall below 20 degrees, it's classed as a tropical night, and we could see some spots in that category for tonight. Any early mistiness lifting and clearing for tomorrow, and we basically do it all again. Lots more sunshine overhead, it beats down, temperatures shoot their way upwards. In fact, we could see values creeping a little bit higher for tomorrow, a 33, maybe a 34 degrees. As you can see, we're widely talking, many of us, into the 30s for tomorrow. Our high tide times, we've got Sheerness there at 2:06 and again at 2:24 into the afternoon. And finally, the outlook. So I think perhaps a bit more high-level cloud around on Sunday, but still ever such a warm-feeling day. Then into next week, uncertainty about the detail, but this chance of some showers, possibly some thunderstorms. You may see some warnings issued, so we will be keeping a close watch on it. Have a good weekend. Take care.
Valent sponsors ITV Meridian Weather.
We're still talking hydrangeas, but I won't bore you. In just a moment, the ITV Evening News with Gamal van Buller.
Can I just say, I do care about your wilting hydrangeas, but I'm more worried about my agapanthus, OK? I can only cope with too many things at once. Right. That's it. Have a great weekend. Bye-bye.
Good night.
I mean...